legislature legalized unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said to Trump, but they're getting booty.
He said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsements from Georgia carry that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.
Guys, he doesn't really need an introduction either. His name is one of the most well-known in this fight for election integrity. And he has been at it and working diligently to get to the bottom of the truth and to explain it to others. And we're so grateful for his work and for the work of VoterGA. We're honored to have you here tonight, Garland. Garland Favorito, everybody give him a hand.
Thank you, Jackie. It's great to be here, and Jeff, thank you for setting this up as well, and all of you.
And that's the end of the show.
I just accidentally hit the advance button, as you can see there. I also want to recognize Ray, and we seem to travel in the same circles. So I guess that's a good thing, though. It seems like we're on the same page. I wanted to start off tonight, first of all, also I got to thank Roy. We did an interview over there this afternoon, and it's what very interesting about that interview is that he went back and talked about how did I get to where I am today. You know, how did I get into all this? And it's a really fascinating thing because I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm actually got some good news for you, but it's really great to be here. Northwest Georgia is the prettiest part of Georgia.
Amen.
I know that because you live here. So it's great to be with you, but before I get into what I want to tell you, and we'll have plenty of time for questions, I want to pay a little respect to this location and where we are. I did this same thing down in Bryan County, at Fort McAllister, but we're right close to, I guess it's up this way, a place where many, many people died. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be political tonight and controversial, but they died because Georgia was invaded. Georgia was invaded unconstitutionally. And I want to let you know that I recognize that fully. And the reason that I say that it was an invasion is because on the 9th and 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, they have, the South had a right to secede. All powers in the 10th Amendment are not reserved, they're not enumerated, are reserved for the states. Secession was a power that was reserved for the states and for the people. So that, I just wanted to say I really respect the fact that we are where we are here. So that said, I'm going to jump right into the presentation tonight. And I want to talk, it's got good news for you. A lot of good news. You know, usually I have to bring bad news for all, to you. But tonight I want to share some good news. It's kind of fun. It's not very often that I get to share good news. But the good news is that we have put in place and are continuing to put into place some of the most significant landmark legislation and state election board rules in the country. We've already been recognized. I was on Mike Lindell's show today talking about that, and while I was in the waiting room, the other states where we're talking about how well Georgia has done. So I want to get into that. I want to talk about our landmark election integrity provisions and that we have gotten passed. So in regards to election integrity and election security, basically, let's kind of sum this up. What do we mean by these terms? So first of all, sum it up, election security is only legal votes counted as cast. That's what we mean by election security. Election transparency should have, that means publicly verifiable results. Election integrity, if we can do those two things, we can restore public confidence in the election. And we're going to explain a little bit about how to do that. A little bit later, I'm going to ask a certain special individual come up. Tamara, my wife of the last 2 years, it has been a great blessing to this organization and me. So thank you. And she's going to tell you how to safeguard your ballot. We're going to show you how the safest way to vote, and we want everyone to vote, as Jackie has said. And this is also on the video. In case you forget it tonight, you can just look at Rory's video and where we interviewed today. So election security demands fraud prevention. We want to prevent fraud, and we've been down the state election board, and I am amazed at the people down there that don't want to prevent fraud. It's unbelievable, despite all common sense. And I'm talking about the chairman of the state election board, one of the members, the attorney general of the state of Georgia, and y'all already know about the Secretary of State. I'm not even talking about him. So it's pretty chilling, but we want to, first of all, deter ballot trafficking, deter ballot counterfeiting, deter ballot box stuffing, deter electronic vote manipulation. Those are the things that we want to prevent in the 2024 election, and we were victimized by all of these in the 2020 election. So we want to make sure that no ineligible ballots are cast. Only eligible ballots are cast. We want to make sure that no fake ballots are injected into the vote count. We want to make sure that no ballots are added after election day, and no votes are changed after they are cast and manipulated. So what has the legislature done to try to achieve some of these objectives? And it's been quite amazing. I want to tell you what we have done, and I'm not saying we, it's thanks a lot to y'all for lobbying your legislators. Of course, we're in a great situation up here. We're in the land of Colton Moore and MTG. So the rest of the state doesn't have it so good. But we did get a lot of help. I want to recognize some of the legislators who have helped us pass this stuff. But let me first tell you what we have gotten done. Number one, the legislature banned all outdoor drop boxes. The only thing you can have you have to have a drop box in the election office or a polling location. No more ballots, drop boxes in the middle of the night, people come and stuffing ballots on it. That will not happen in 2024. So I think that's a good thing. I knew you would like that. It just took a little while to think about it. The other thing the legislature did is they banned all direct and indirect private money coming in from out of state going into the counties. That's the Zucker box. Mark Zuckerberg is not going to control this election in the state of Georgia this time. He spent $45 million last time, and 94% of that money went to counties that Joe Biden won. That's a violation of your equal protection and due process rights in both the federal and the state constitutions. Another thing we did, and we lobbied really hard for this, was that we made ballot images public record.
Yes, sir.
That was a great accomplishment. There was only one problem. Once we got the ballot images, we found out that they had been electronically altered before Fulton County certified the 2020 results. You've probably seen a little bit about this at the state election board. So we have to come back and make ballots public record. I'll tell you about that in a minute. The other thing we did, the legislature did, was to replace the signature matching with driver's ID license matching. Driver's license ID matching. Why did they do that? Because signature matching is subjective, number one. But most importantly, Fulton County just didn't do any in the 2020 election. This is by an affidavit from the Fulton County, one of the Fulton County board members, and they've even actually acknowledged this in court, that their machine, their Bluegrass machine, wasn't working. They didn't use it in the 2020 election. That's how they matched those signatures. So yeah, I'll come to you on the questions in just a second. In fact, I think I'll do the Q&A at the end if that's okay. The other thing that happened, we have a lot of, well, I think I'm going to skip on to what happened this next year, and then we're going to cover all of these. The counties have to post total ballots cast by voting method on election night. We're trying to get the election board independently funded. The legislature funded that board, and the governor line item vetoed that stuff, most of the funding out, and they are having a lot of trouble with funding. They need to have their own investigators, and they need to have their own legal counsel, I believe. Now, the Attorney General is saying that no, you can't do that under the law. So there's a battle going on there. In 2024, I'm going to move on. We now will have ballot security paper with visible watermarks for all ballots in the election. I knew you would like that. Here's another one of my favorites. Actually, these are all my favorites. But the prior day's absentee ballots, absentee ballots prior to election night, anything that's collected before election day has to be tabulated on election night. You can't tabulate those absentee ballots for 3 days after the election, as what we saw in 2020. So that is, I think, a major accomplishment. So this time, if you remember, in the 2020 election, Brad Raffensperger went on NBC Today TV the day after the election, said, the votes are in. We know now from the counties that 4.7 million voters voted. We don't guess about this. And at this time, Donald Trump had 103,750 vote lead. He said basically 2% was left to count. They were going to finish counting that day, which would have been Wednesday after the election. 2% of 4.7 million is 94,000. So he said that we're going to be finished counting today, and it will not change the results of the election. Brad Raffensperger let voting continue, let the election counting continue, and he certified 5 million ballots, not 4.7 million. 300,000 votes came out of nowhere. We still do not know where those votes came from after he said 4.7 million, and we don't guess. The outcome has been determined. So that will not happen again in 2024 because of this law that the legislature passed. Another thing we did was we made physical ballots subject to open records requests. That is something we have been working very hard for, because the fundamental thing, as I mentioned when we started, the fundamental thing for election integrity is transparency. We talked about this a lot on the show today with Roy. Election transparency is the essence of integrity and security. If you think about this for a minute. The Secretary of State, and it's not just this secretary, it's been a lot of them all over the country, they have been conducting secretly counted elections and telling you who won for decades. And they're expecting you to believe that and take whatever word that they say, that's who won. That is absurd. So we have to be able to prove who won the election. Any one of you in the room, if you have a little money, a little time, you should be able to get the results, get the ballots, get a copy of the ballots made independent of the machine, and you should be able to hand count or electronically if you get really slick with software, and you should be able to verify, yeah, Brad Raffensperger did certify the correct results. But you cannot do that. The other thing that is important for y'all to know, because I know a lot of you are might be poll watchers coming up. I encourage you to be a poll worker if you can. If not, be a poll watcher. Tamara does poll worker and poll watcher training. We've actually done it up here in Ringgold once. We were glad to come back and do it. We need some excuse to come back to Northwest Georgia anyway. It's really pretty up here. So
We'll set that up.
okay, Jeff has volunteered to set that up. So another important thing is that when you've been a poll watcher in the past, they stick you in the corner 30 feet away and say, okay, yeah, you can watch anything that's going on. That's useless. So now the law has been changed to say that poll watchers must have meaningful access, which means to hear and see the election processes that are going on, so that you can verify that they are correct. So that is another major improvement. I'm going to skip one or two of these. There's been a lot of clarifications for valid voter roll entry and challenges. You know, that's a big issue. We presented at the election board this week. Lucia Frazier explained to the board that there are 29,000 ineligible registrations on the file. 29,000 people who used to live in Georgia have signed a national change of address form, and they've moved to Florida and voted. And that's perfectly fine, but yet they're still on the rolls in Georgia. Now, the problem with that is those ineligible registrations can be used to stuff ballots for those records. And we've got to clean up the rolls. So there's a lot of clarifications that they made in that. We've got some very interesting state election board rules. If anybody wants to talk about it in the Q&A, we're glad to tell you about that. We have gotten improved chain of custody for ballots, sign-off and sealing procedures as they transfer the containers from elected official to elected official. Those have been improved. That was a constituent-driven bill. It was really good. And what's interesting about these two bills, this one and the open records, open ballots, is that the Secretary of State was trying to delay these, and even though he has no dog in the hunt, this is something that the counties have to do, but he's trying to say, okay, we'll do it as of January 1, 2025. Let us get through this election so that we can completely corrupt it again, and then we'll do it right from now on. So this is an incredible fight. No honest Secretary of State would have taken that position. This is crooked, this is corruption, let's call it what it is. Finally, the legislature executed a ban on unverifiable QR codes. Now, this has already been declared. The voting system that we use was declared by the United States District Court, Judge Tugberg, as in violation of 2 Georgia statutes before they conducted the 2020 election. It was on October 11th of 2020 when she made that ruling. It was too close to order any relief. So, too close to the election. So the election was conducted on machines that the United States District Court said violated 2 Georgia statutes for verifiability. And the reason is, as y'all know, is that the system accumulates votes in the QR code, which you as a voter can't see or verify. Anybody can read a QR code in here? Well, I'll give you another hint. Even if you had a QR code reader, you still couldn't read that ballot because it is a proprietary encoding structure that they use. So you cannot read it, but they kept you from reading it, but they didn't encrypt it so that the hackers can encrypt it, but they can go in and hack it, but you can't read it. So if they hack it, the system was set up by Dominion so that you could not see and understand your own vote, but the hackers could get in and see it because it's not encrypted. So that's the worst of both worlds. That's what we are dealing with here. This is how corrupt the system is, and this is why we have to unplug this system as soon as possible. But to finish up on the QR codes, and it was a little bit frustrating because they will not implement this until July 26th. But that gives us, there's two advantages to that. First of all is, if they had tried to implement it now, they would have patched the system. We don't want them to patch the system. We want them to unplug the system and get it the heck out of Georgia altogether. We don't want to vote on it. No one trusts it. And then, but the other thing that's really good about this is this sent a message. Okay, if the U.S. District Court wasn't announced, that was federal. This sent a message that the state legislature says that QR code voting, unverifiable voting, is unacceptable for Georgia, and that message has now been sent to 49 other states that, sorry, that's not good enough for us, so it shouldn't be good enough for you either. So that was the good part. There's quite a few other things that I think I'm going to skip over. There's a lot of other things, you can kind of read them. Let's see, I'm trying to pick out ones that are really, what you might really be interested in. And these are just kind of technical things that were done. What I like, one of my other favorite ones that I missed here, oh, here it is. This is the one I wanted to tell you about. I think I accidentally skipped it. Elections officials must now be U.S. citizens. If you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote,
Jeez.
why don't you have to be a U.S. citizen to handle 500,000 Fulton County ballots? Now, you know, this is what happened. A non-U.S. citizen was handling 500,000 Fulton County ballots in 2020, and I'm talking about the electronic ballots, electronic images. And this is where we ended up with a lot of corruption, because we had non-U.S. citizens likely could have been involved in the process. So there's other things that they've done. They've already said that counties conducting elections with less than 5,000 voters can use hand-marked paper ballots. That's a great thing. But we want hand-marked paper ballots and publicly recorded hand counts for all counties, for all elections. And then there's some other things. There's some nice conflict of interest legislation that got passed. More audits, although we've got a lot of issues with the way that audits are conducted, and you can't really trust them. What you have to do, as most of you here already know, is to hand count the ballots. And that way you know the results are correct. So I guess that I'm just going to kind of sum up there. That's pretty much where we are. So I want to just mention, who do we have to thank for all this? So, you know, we're always criticizing legislators, and usually it's rightfully so. But so I felt like maybe it's time to recognize them when they actually do something good. We need to recognize them. So we have to give them a carrot every now and then, and instead of a stick all the time. So here's some folks that really, really helped us out. One of them, the most valuable player, we gave them an award, is Senator Max Burns. Almost all of these improvements he carried, so we call him the most valuable player. But we've gotten a lot of help from, over on the House side, from John LaHood. And John is down in Valdosta. He is pretty young. He doesn't really know all the ins and outs of the problems, but he was able to carry these bills through, and very successful. And he's well liked by House Speaker John Burns, and that was huge for us. So they were great. Some of these folks had legislation, you know, Brandon Beach, Marty Harmon, Kelly Kirkpatrick, Shaw Blackman, Tim Fleming, Rod Leverett, Alan Powell. Let me show you real quickly who did what, just so you know. So Max Burns did the SB 189, you're probably familiar with that, banned the QR codes, had the 8 p.m. election night absentee tabulation. Brandon Beach had the election workers must be U.S. citizens. Now, the reason I want to point this out to you is because their language gets sucked into another bill, and then it gets passed. And they don't get any credit because somebody else's name is on it. So I just wanted to recognize these folks. Marty Harbin, Senator Marty Harbin down in Fayette, had the Watermarsh ballot security paper. Kay Kirkpatrick helped us with the physical ballot subject to open records request. This is an interesting story because one of our VoterGA volunteers happened to have a conversation with her as she was campaigning, and he explained to me and asked her, "What are you doing about election integrity?" So she calls me up and says, "What can I do to help you?" And you know, she hadn't been that helpful before. She has come to my presentation, and she sponsored the bill because one of our volunteers had a conversation with her when she was out campaigning. So that's the impact that you can have. It's quite amazing. This is not stuff that I'm doing or Tamara. It's stuff that the volunteers are doing. Senator Rick Williams is one of the smartest guys down there on elections, but his bill did not make it this time. He wanted to mandate foreign agents to register and disclose political activity. That's a great bill. There's more work to do on that bill. The government can't veto that bill. I don't fault him for that one. It just needed, Rick said it just needed to work out a few more things. They'll get it passed in the next session. John LaHood had some improvement in audits, public posting of ballot images, and then Shal Blackman had one of my favorite ones, and that was similar to Kay Kirkpatrick's. It was the bill that physical ballots had to be subject to open records request. Tim Fleming had the meaningful access for poll watchers. Rod Leverett, who chairs the election subcommittee in the House, had state election board independence language. And then House Bill 17, the ballot chain of custody bill, was Alan Powell he's up in the Lake Hartwell area. So those are the people who authored all of this language that I think they really do deserve a hand. You know, the legislatures, one of the things that Tamara and I have noticed, they work really, really hard. It's unbelievable. You know, we sit back and we don't see a lot of progress a lot of times, and it's because there's a lot of them are being controlled at the upper levels, and this is that for that reason we've got to also recognize who helped move these bills, and this is where this year we had upper level support, and I can't tell you how much it means to have the difference between Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan versus House Speaker John Burns and House Speaker David Wilson. That leadership change changed everything, and suddenly we got support that we didn't have the previous year. So we tried to take full advantage of that as best we can. Some of the other folks that helped us out, who have not normally been very helpful, but because of the leadership change, they became more helpful. Speaker Pro Tempore Jan Jones in the House hasn't been that helpful, but she was very helpful to John LaHood this time. Rules Chair Butch Parrish, the Rules Chair, y'all may not know, but the Rules Chair is the ones that move the bills. Matt Brass, very helpful over in the Senate. He's down in Coweta County. So, and then finally, I got to recognize Majority Leader Steve Gooch. Steve did a lot for us this session. He was there in many of the committee meetings trying to help us get stuff passed. He took on Senator Derek Mallow on the floor to get our bill passed on signing die, the 189. And he's been really incredibly helpful to us. And one of the reasons, I also have to give a shout out to the former First Vice Chair, Brian Pritchard. He has a very close relationship with him. And Brian was instrumental in helping us get Steve extremely well on board. So this did not come without opposition. I want to let you know who the opposition is. You know, all these measures are nonpartisan. So, and it's ironic here because the Democrats have historically been much more attuned to election integrity than the Republicans, because the Democrats believe that they were cheated, dating all the way back to 2002, and I believe they were cheated in 2002 out of the governor's race and the Senate race. But suddenly in 2020, when the Republicans got cheated, all of a sudden the Democrats became quiet. So it kind of depends on who wins. You know, the Republicans were quiet when they were winning, and now the Democrats. But specific opposition on the floor came from Representative Sarah Draper, who we believe that she will run for Secretary of State on the Democratic Party. Rua Rahman, Stacey Evans did the minority report against Senate Bill 189, which was the biggest bill that we had this year, the omnibus bill. And then Senator Derek Mallow testified against that bill on the floor. So these are the folks that were opposing these bills. Governor Kemp, to my surprise, did sign all the bills. That's great. However, at the same time, he is trying to line out and veto the funding for the state election board. So we need a little bit more support from him to turn things around here. So where did we stand? 2024 election security. We basically have now gotten language to unseal the ballots. We've got a big check. This has been our platform for the last year. We've got signs that are now 50% obsolete because we only got Unplugged Georgia left to do. We've pretty much gotten a good bit of the transparency we wanted, but we haven't gotten the machines unplugged yet, and that's our objective. Just because we were successful in this legislative session with a lot of stuff, it doesn't mean we're going to just suddenly drop the most important thing, which is Unplugged Georgia. You might have seen a press conference lately. I gave 20 reasons why we have to unplug the Dominion system from Georgia, and boy, those are some really doozies. These systems we know are being programmed from foreign countries, specifically Serbia, and also at least one or two Chinese involved there. But there's much more. We need to declare the Clerk v. Raffensperger case. Our other co-founder, VoterGA co-founder Ricardo Davis, is in that case, and he is a plaintiff. We have asked the court, and they have the authority to declare the Dominion voting system constitutionally deficient, declare the existing audit procedures wholly inadequate. You really have to have hand counts. And then to impose a special minister to oversee the 2024 election security and implement whatever rules that, whatever the orders that Judge Totenberg has made. I'm very disappointed that she has not ruled. She should have ruled back in May or June, and she has not. And that's pretty disturbing. It makes her look very political. So she has given us some very good rulings. But now, suddenly she has climbed up for this ultra-critical election. She has the evidence. We've given her the evidence. So what is left to do to work on next year? As I say, we have to unplug the voting system. We want publicly recorded hand counts at the polling locations. That we have got multiple procedures to show that this can be done quickly, and it can be done without any fraud because they're publicly recorded, and I'm talking about video recording. So there is really no reason why you can't do that. And finally, what we want to do is we recognize that these counties are refusing to pull the invalid registrations off their database, so we want to impose a penalty on them if they refuse to clean their rolls after they're presented with corroborating evidence that these election records are ineligible, and they don't get rid of them. They need to suffer a $100 to $1,000 fine for each one that they leave on the rolls, each record. Okay, and then to wrap up, I want to just mention, actually, I think I want to go to this one first, and then I'll come back. So, the question now comes, and we put the challenge down to the other states. And the other states that know what we've done. We are on calls with other states around the country, election integrity advocates. They're using us as a model right now. I just talked to a lady in Maryland today when we were waiting for the Lindell's online session, and she said we're using Georgia, your legislation as models up here. And that's what they're advocating for. So if we can do it, other states can use secure ballot paper with visible watermarks. They can tabulate all their prior day absentee ballots on election night. They can make all the physical ballots publicly available, and they can have some airtight sign-off and sealing, chain of custody procedures. They can ensure that poll watchers hear and see all election processes, and they can ban the unverifiable QR vote accumulation system in their states as well. That can all be done. So I want to leave you with this thought, and before we open up for questions, I've got one. Tamara wants to show you one more thing, and or actually, I want Tamara to show you that one thing. But why do we have to unplug the voting system? So the issues that were identified, everybody probably knows what Dr. Alex Hall, the expert witness in the Garland case, Garland v. Ragsburg. He has explained in his security analysis that the issues he has identified cannot be readily remediated or patched. There is no patch that is going to solve all of the problems with this system. Don't let anyone deceive you about that. No patch will solve the problems. It's just a facade. Don't fall for that. The systems, Dr. Coleman has explained that the system is not designed with sufficient security, and it cannot be retrofitted with enough security to protect the voters. And he said this point blank in his security analysis. You may remember that the system declared the wrong winners in the May 22 DeKalb primary. The system literally declared the wrong winners in the District 2 Commission race. It shorted one of the candidates 75% of her votes. She had 4,000 votes and only gave her 1,000. And the only way this was detected was because she got no votes in the precinct where she and her family lived. And she said, I know I voted for myself. I don't know about my husband, but I think he did. So, and that was her family. So she took this to the board, and they said, okay, well, we'll run the machine count again. They ran it again and got the same error. And then they had to investigate. They did a hand count, and that's how they found it. So that's the only way they found it. How many other races in that primary were also corrupted, and we don't know it because no audit was done. As soon as that audit was done, the DeKalb County Election Board wanted to do more. Secretary of State came in and said, no, and literally threatened them, don't do any more audits of any races. And that was the same primary that Brad Raffensperger declared himself the winner of by 51% of the vote after he was polling 18 to 39% up until the day of the election. I asked Mark Roundtree, the Landmark Communications, how could that happen? He says, I don't know. He's the expert poller in the entire state of Georgia. So that's another one. The Dominion voting system is installed to be accessed remotely in many different ways. How do we know this? There is a report at tmpeters.us called MESA number 2. I would urge you to look at that report. It's incredibly convincing. It's got a lot of pictures in there. If you're not technical, you can see the pictures, and it's very clear the way it was written by Mr. Gould, who is a career cybersecurity expert. So, so the system is set up to be accessed remotely. I'm going to just mention what this is. It's not just the database, but they have uncertified manipulation tool on there called SQL Server Studio. The ports are set up to be default. The firewall is set up to allow anyone from anywhere in the world access into the system. Everything is set up for remote access. It's not an accident. It was set up that way intentionally. We also know now, with court evidence, that Michigan and Georgia, in both cases, Dominion personnel access the system remotely. And in the case of Georgia, it was in the 2021 U.S. Senate race in Coffee County. We have the witnesses. They went in and they changed the a scanner remotely through a wireless access, and it came through, of all things, not the internet. So you got to be careful, it came through the phone. So that's how they did it. So they try to say, well, it's not connected to the internet. Oh, well, does it have wireless capability? See, they're very clever with the way they couch this. And these idiotic election officials don't have enough. You know, you've been down there enough. You've seen it with your own eyes, Lisa, by the way. And I'll thank you for coming all the way from Northwest Georgia down to the state election board meetings.
I'll be there every time the doors are open if they allow us in there.
You-
And when they don't allow us, we go to the steps and do a press conference.
You have been a true patriot. I mean, it takes a while to get down. That's a 2-hour drive. So we really appreciate you. I meant to give you a shout out earlier. Anyway, they don't know how to ask the right questions. I mentioned before, we know now from court documents in Michigan that the system is programmed by Serbians. It's not programmed by Americans. We're using a system that is programmed by Serbians. It's a Canadian, but to me it's a Canadian-based company. They are not a U.S. company. I don't care what you title. And they have no history in voting system manufacturing. They were basically a holding company, and they bought Sequoia from Smartmatic. And that's how they got into this business. Very, very suspect. And then finally, I want to mention to you that the CEO, John Poulos, has now is under a criminal complaint for testifying falsely at a Michigan hearing at Dominion, and there's quite a few things he testified falsely to, but one of them is that there's no remote access. So that said, I'm going to stop for Q&A, but I think I just wanted to let Tamara, I wanted to talk about the safeguard your ballot real quick, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Oh, and we have a special book for you.
Before I start on our initiative for Safeguard Your Ballot, I just want to make a couple of comments. One is, on Sunny Day, we talked to Senator Steve Gooch and thanked him, of course, for his help in getting the bills passed. And he said, we couldn't have done it without you. It was your people that were emailing, calling, and down here at the committee meetings. So if you have been able to go down, please come back this next session. I know it's a long ways. Get on our mailing list if you aren't already. You can go to our website, VoterGA.org, to the volunteer tab, sign up. You're not obligated to volunteer, but it puts you on our email distribution list. And if we need people to start emailing about an issue, you'll hear about it. It really does make a difference. Safeguard your ballot. If somebody's playing a recording.
Security. Security.
The best way to vote so that your ballot is safe is to request an absentee ballot early. Yesterday was the first day that you're allowed to request an absentee ballot. You can go on to the Secretary of State website and fill out an application. Then you can scan it, email it to your county election office. Because the mail is so unreliable, you definitely need to do it early. We're going to do ours tomorrow when we get back home. Then you don't turn it in until election day. And don't put it in the mail, take it to the elections office. We would recommend election day, or if you're a poll worker or a poll watcher, so you're busy on election day, then turn it in the day before to the elections office. So what you're doing when you request your absentee ballot, your voter registration file is going to be flagged. So nobody can go and use your registration to vote. But then by holding it until election day, they can't use the fact that you returned your ballot as a part of the algorithm to determine how many ballots were needed to offset votes. Got it?
That's good.
Not in the precinct.
Oh, good.
Election day, not in the precinct on election day, right?
You cannot turn in an absentee ballot on election day at a precinct. What you can do, if you want to, is you can take it and surrender it, and you can vote in person. But the reason we're suggesting that you get an absentee ballot is you take the ballot marking device out of the process. We know it's unverifiable, it's illegal, as Garland just explained, as determined by federal district court. So if you do the absentee ballot, you completely take the BMD, as they call them, out of the process. It will still be scanned. There's nothing we can do about that at this point, but at least out of the two machines, you've got one out of there, okay? So if you want to read up on this, you can go to VoterGA.org. Right on the home page, you'll see this poster. Click on it, and it will take you to a write-up, so it goes through each of these steps. But I definitely suggest that you do it as soon as possible. We actually had a friend of ours who mentioned just last week that at the end of June, she mailed out 200 invitations to her daughter's wedding, and as of last week, less than 50% had been delivered. So you need to give the post office a long time to get the ballot to you, and that's why you don't want to put it back in the mail to get it back to the elections office. Okay. And Roy has it on his video.
We'll be doing a special video, and we'll be pushing it out, and every week between now and the election, I'm going to advertise it once a week, and I can help. So,
Great.
Wonderful.
Great.
So if you forget about it, if you forget what we said tonight, it's on Roy's video.
There you go.
And before we get Q&A, I just want to mention we do have apparel up here, t-shirts and hats. They're free with a $25 donation. And then a new item that we've got on our table tonight is a book called Reversed from Culturally Woke to Biblically Awake. And this was written by Dr. Jim Garlow, who heads up a ministry, well-versed, which brings biblical principles of governance to governmental leaders. He wrote this book. Now it looks like a textbook, so don't be scared off. It's really to be used as a reference. It's got 60 topics that today we would say they're political issues, but they're really biblical issues like abortion, traditional marriage, transgenderism, like Christian nationalism. And they're real short little chapters so that we know how to talk to our families and neighbors about this. He just wrote this book, and because he wants it to get out there, he is basically giving it away at his cost. Retail is $27, and we can get it for $8. So I've got a number of copies here with us tonight. So please take a look. It's an excellent book.
Thanks, Tamara. Yes, and again, if you forgot anything about this, it's on Roy's video. I wanted to just mention two more quick things. If you'd like to get involved, just go to VoterGA.org and volunteer. And you click on the volunteer tab, you just click on this first link, and it'll ask you a couple questions. And you can join our call every Saturday morning, 9 to 11, once you're a volunteer. There's no obligation, you don't have to do anything, but you get an invitation to call and you get informed. We have some amazing calls that people just rave about. We have, last week we went through all the state election board issues that we haven't even talked about tonight. We had Tina Peters on, talking about her case. No telling what we're going to do this week. Things break every week, so we don't decide until Thursday or Friday what we're going to do. And then finally, we are a nonpartisan organization, 501c3. Donations are tax deductible, and we're volunteers. Nobody takes a salary here. Tamara's actually a donor, and all the money can go right back into the legal center. I'm retired. We're just doing this to try to save Georgia for 2024. And that's it.